Welcome, everybody, to the Inner Carnivore Podcast. I have a very special guest today, Bella, aka Steak and Butter Gal. Before I get into it with her, whether you guys are streaming this on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, or Spotify, or watching the full video on YouTube, do a huge, huge favor. Like the show, subscribe, leave a review, share it with your friends. It helps more than you guys know, and I appreciate it every single time that you guys do it. So jumping right in, how are you, Bella?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited because, when I first started Carnivore, you were definitely, one of the first people that I, A, not only followed, but B, knew about, right? Knew on
Wow.
the space. And part of it is, you've gotten quite a bit of publicity from, especially the butter, right? People love to freak out when they watch you eating butter.
Yep.
Whether it's, I can't remember where I saw the first article. It was New York, maybe it wasn't the New York Times, but it was something like that. And I was like,
something like
what
that.
is
Yeah. New York
happening
Post
right now?
I know.
And then, I swear every single person who is anti-carnivore ever has done a reaction video to one of your butter videos, which I think are absolutely hilarious.
For sure.
But before I get into the social media aspect of it, because I think that's a fascinating part, I also know you have a pretty crazy backstory on how you got to carnivore. So how did you start on the journey? Because you were vegan for a long time, correct?
Yep. I was vegan for a long time, for 6 years. And that was the reason why I was desperate to find that answer. And so that answer just so happened to be carnivore for me. And I see this a lot with people who do end up on carnivore voluntarily and they stay on carnivore. They are so sick and they are so desperate to heal. I was already there by the end of my 6 years of vegan, and I lost my period. I already had built some deep, bad habits with eating and food. I was deeply, deeply addicted to food. I was binging. I was punishing myself by starving after my binges. And I was desperate to firstly heal my hormones and bring back my cycle, because I really want to have kids one day. And I know that you have to have a period to have kids. So that was the biggest red flag for me. Okay, I don't have a period for 2 years. There's got to be something wrong with my health. And I think that's something that women should really focus on and prioritize. I know you don't want to talk about social media just yet, but on TikTok, I talked a little bit about how I got my period back. And there were comments literally saying, "Oh my gosh, you were on a diet where you lost your period. I would like to know how you did that. I hate my period." There are girls literally looking for answers and diets to lose their period. They thought that was a victory. Whereas I was talking about, I'm so happy I just regained my period with the carnivore diet. So it's shocking the more that I post about health and nutrition and my personal journey to learn what these youngsters are after and what they prioritize. It is shocking and so sad. But for me, period was everything. I got it back after just going carnivore for a few months, but the vegan lifestyle left me very sick and very desperate to heal and feel better. I was just sick and tired of feeling like crap. I also was struggling a lot with my memory. So I was a pianist, performing a lot, and having to memorize 60 plus minutes of music. I have to bring it on stage and make sure that I don't have memory slips. But I was having memory slips. And I was wondering, what is going on with my memory? Why can't I focus? Why do I feel so lethargic and drained all the time? And it had everything to do with the vegan diet and what I was feeding myself. So there were a lot of factors that went into why I was searching for that answer. And it just so happens that the carnivore diet healed all of it.
It's a crazy story, and I love hearing it. But it happens more than you you understand. It happens more than people realize. I've personally had 5 or 6 guests on here who were long-term vegans and had all kinds of messed up issues related around hormones. And I think that's such a huge issue, and it's one of the reasons I love trying to get as many women on the show as possible,
Mm-hmm.
because arguments that I get like on social media are low carbs bad for women,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, oh, the men can do low carb, women can't. Like, it messes our hormones. We need carbohydrates. And I can like talk about all the science all I want, but at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not Dr. Kills, and I'm not a woman. So like what I say kind of doesn't really, it kind of lands on deaf ears with a lot of women. So I
Mm,
definitely want to get into the hormones.
sure.
What got you into veganism in the first place? Like how did you go from, like, was it, a gradual transition, or how did you end up vegan to start with?
Yeah. I was struggling with weight. So I was a teenager and I gained my freshman 15. And I also was not fitting into my dresses that I had to wear when I performed. So I panicked a little and I wanted to lose weight quickly. I was impatient. So I did a YouTube search and I searched how to lose weight quick. And the first video that popped up was a vegan. And she was touting her raw till 4 approach. And basically, that means she eats raw fruit, raw veg up until 4 p.m. When 4 p.m. hits, she eats cooked starches, still vegan, rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes cooked. And she said, if you eat like this, you can lose weight, you can be super thin, you can have my 6 pack like me. And so I tried it. I actually dropped weight quickly. But looking back, that's because I cut out all of the junk and all of the processed foods and the fast foods that I was eating. So that's why I was, curious to start the vegan diet. I just ended up doing it for 6 years because I fell into the trap of the whole vegan community saying, don't you dare leave the vegan diet. Otherwise, you're a terrible human being. You should feel so guilty and ashamed. So I just stayed there for 6 years until I couldn't anymore.
Oh my gosh, I literally had somebody comment on one of my posts. They're like, yeah, I was, vegan for a while, and then I stopped and I had all these problems.
Mm.
And the response was, you weren't vegan, you were plant-based. I'm like,
Okay. Yeah, I get that too.
I'm like, okay, I understand what you're saying. And then they were like, well, it's because you don't know what vegan is. I'm like, no, I do. I was like, they're like, you don't know the difference. I was like, plant-based is a diet and vegan's a cult. Like, that's the difference.
Right.
Because I've gone like this with so many vegans, but
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy how it ends up like that. Like, and how much of the stigma or the almost brainwashing that young women go through
Mm-hmm.
in their preteen, their teen years. You got to be thin. That's bad for
Mm-hmm.
you. Like, eat low fat.
Yeah.
Stay away from, like, and I've heard this one too, like the fatty meats or the red meats for the men. Like, you eat the lean meat, the chicken and the
Oh,
salads and all that. How
yeah.
much do you think that plays into people ending up vegan? Because statistically,
Hmm.
I think it's like 75% of vegans are women.
Mm.
And so
Interesting.
what role do you think that plays into how so many women end up vegan for pretty much exactly the reasons that you did?
I think the vegan diet comes off as a diet that is very good for weight loss, for sure. Because I also see a lot of celebrities touting it. For example, Kim Kardashian talking about Beyond Meat a lot. So of course, it's a big influence when you have these big celebrities that so many young women are following and looking up to and wanting to look like. It's very dangerous when you do that. There's a lot of accounts on Instagram as well with these beautiful Instagrammable girls touting the vegan diet. So I think it very much has to do with the person who is advocating for it. And that's why I try to advocate as hard as I can with me eating meat and sticks of butter to combat all of the other accounts out there saying that the vegan diet is the answer to good hormones, no bloat, losing a lot of fat. But I think it also is very much tied with women should eat salads and they should move their body more, move more, eat less, that phrase, right? And for some reason, the vegan diet just fits really well into that puzzle.
Yeah, it's what I have gathered from the numerous people that I've talked to that have gone down the same road, right? It's,
Mhm.
all this stuff. And then, so at what point did you start to notice maybe this isn't working? Like, How far into it did you lose your period? You started to notice that hormones were dysregulated. So how far into vegan did you start to realize?
1 year in is when I started to realize, my weight is not staying down. I started to feel hungrier and hungrier, and that usually leads to eating a lot more, but a lot of empty calories. So it just led to a lot of binging. I would eat way too much oatmeal, potatoes, sweet potatoes. These types of foods just don't keep you satiated for long. So when you're eating these huge volumes, and then you wait and you get hungry shortly after, you feel like you are overeating. You feel like you're doing something wrong, right? And it also contributed to my bloat. So I just felt fat the whole time. And it was just not helping with my self-image, my self-confidence. My skin wasn't getting better either. So I just started to feel worse and worse about myself. And every time I looked in the mirror, I just felt down, you know? And I would say 1 year in is when my weight started to go up and down, fluctuating a lot. My hormones, I feel like, took a hit maybe 2 years in, but 4 years in is when I really lost my cycle completely. So I would say that was when it was like it hit rock bottom. And I still held out for 2 more years because I was just so stubborn. And I was also so scared. Like I was so scared to eat meat again, you know? And like the community, the things that they would say, I was literally convinced that losing my period was a sign of health by the vegan community and that I should be very happy and grateful that that happened. So it was a lot of brainwashing as well. Yeah.
Which, like, that's so. I have a background in sports medicine, right? Like, and I still vividly remember this. I remember a lot of school, right? Like, it's just the way my memory works. But I very vividly remember taking a class, a specific sports class, and a very, very common problem with female athletes is it's called the female athlete triad. And in the triad, it's very common for athletes in season to lose their period, have low energy, and start having bone density issues. Not good. Like, not good at all. And so when I hear people who are like, say that that's a positive, I'm like, you cannot possibly. And I think it's exasperated by now if you go to a doctor, that's my next question is, did you have any doctor interaction? But you go to a doctor, and I'm not even a female, but I know exactly what happens the moment you go to a doctor and have hormone problems. They try and put you on birth control, which then either regulates or eliminates your period. Which and then the more I learn into that, I'm like, what on earth is happening? So that being the next question.
Yes.
Being that you're stubborn and you're having these problems, was there doctor conversations involved? Like, hey, doc, like I'm eating this way. I have these issues. What do you got?
There were doctor conversations involved in both lifestyles. And the first doctor conversation that actually made me wake up was that full blood panel test that I took because I initially was concerned that I didn't have a cycle. So I went and took that full panel blood test, and that doctor sat me down and she said, there is something wrong with your results. And she was the one who said, you have to start eating animal foods again. Or you can supplement very heavy if you insist on staying on the vegan diet. So that was the wake up call that I needed to go back into searching for answers. And that's how I fell into that rabbit hole of carnivore. And then on carnivore, I have had multiple doctor conversations and they've all been positive. Like not a single one actually has been, oh, you have to take statins. Oh, you have to go on birth control. I just explained to them I'm on a ketogenic diet. And luckily, all of these doctors are familiar with this diet, ketogenic, and the trends of your blood test results and what is the new normal if you're on keto. And they all understood. They read my numbers. They looked at my LDL, which is high, and they didn't see that as a concern because then they looked at my triglycerides and my HDL and they were impressed, to say the least. Like my triglycerides dropped so far down and my HDL went so high up from vegan to carnivore. And I have a YouTube video comparing it with Dr. Ovadia. Even he was like, wow, your triglycerides are the best I've ever seen. And that's because of meat and butter.
That's awesome to hear, because that's honestly like, you hear the opposite so many times, right?
Yeah.
Oh, like keep on your vegan, but we'll add this, or we'll add this medication, or we'll add these supplements.
Right.
So that's really awesome. And it's also awesome that you have doctors that understand the LDL aspect. And when I talk to people about LDL, I'm like, okay, well, there's a couple factors, right?
Mm-hmm.
One, there is a lot of people who are especially leaner. And, there's a study that Nick Norwitz has referenced multiple times. I think he was involved in it, where as body mass increased, the LDL response was less. It's part of what goes into his lipid energy model. Basically, the leaner you are, the higher your LDL is, and your body utilizes that as an energy source.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've thought that for a while, right? And I have elevated LDL, shocker. But I too also have pretty good triglycerides and HDL.
Nice.
But the biggest thing for me that illustrated that LDL is not the end-all be-all is, so I did my 4,000 standard American diet experiment, where for 3 weeks I ate 4,000 calories of just absolute garbage. It's terrible. My LDL dropped by over 100 pounds. Right? So like if I'm looking at cardiovascular risk factors, my health, because it's like for every 5 points, like your risk of cardiovascular disease goes down by like 9%. So my risk of on paper, from these LDL people, my risk of cardiovascular disease went way down by eating stuff like Twinkies and Pop-Tarts all day. And I'm like, there's no way. There is no way that you can look me in the face and say, you got healthier by eating this.
Right.
And so I'm like, I'm actually waiting to redo it now that I've gone back to carnivore, because when I did it before, I was also on 4K carnivore, and I'm like, I was overeating quite a bit. So I'm waiting to redo the results so I can compare. But that was the huge red flag for me. It's like, this is an arbitrary number. The same thing with Norwitz's Oreo versus statin experiment, where just adding Oreos dropped his LDL massively.
Exactly.
Like, you can't tell me that this, like you cannot make that make sense to me. Like that does not compute, and I won't accept that as being the end all be all if I can manipulate it with such terror.
Yep. And that's just so, like, unfortunately, that's the number that everybody focuses on. So I get asked every single day, what are your labs? What are your labs? And I say, I have a YouTube video on it. And it goes through the entire list of numbers. And yet people will still say, oh, you got worse in health because of your LDL. That's all they focus on. So, oh well.
Yeah, and that's the same thing I tell people with carnivore. And so I very much believe that our body is very good at telling us whether what we're doing is good, right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, like, you can be super healthy and drop dead of a heart attack, right? Or you can be super healthy and you can get cancer. But if you have certain conditions, like whether it's hormones or whether it's autoimmune or whether it's inflammatory, and every single thing gets better, and 99% of your markers improve, and your energy improves, and your quality of life improves, and your sleep improves, and literally everything improves.
Right.
You're not going to convince me that what you're doing is wrong. Like, you're not. Like, I don't care that one arbitrary number. So here's my fun fact about LDL that I discovered. Did you know that LDL is not actually measured most of the time? LDL in a standard blood panel, LDL is calculated.
Okay.
I'm going to butcher. It's the Friedwald equation, I believe it is.
Okay.
It's a calculated number. And in situations where you have high HDL and low triglycerides, that LDL number can be skewed.
Oh, wow.
You can actually measure LDL, but it's a more invasive procedure. I think you have to get plasma drawn, and it's more expensive. And most of the time, there's not a huge variation, so they don't do it. They literally just draw your blood, measure, and then use the equation to determine your LDL.
So fascinating. That's why it's not
Which
important.
means I'm now being told that I'm going to die based on an equation that may or may not be accurate.
Right, exactly.
Like, you've got to stop. Like, you can't win this. But I get the same thing. What are your blood markers? What's your kidney function? What's your renal function? What's this? I'm like, I'm happy with everything. They're like, oh, well, just wait for heart attack. They're like,
exactly.
Clogged arteries. That's going to clog your arteries. Because that's what animal fast is, right?
Right.
Anyway. So I wanted to go to the hormones.
Mm-hmm.
What has been your experience going back on carnivore? How did your hormones react? And then what do you tell women who are petrified of going low carb or no carb because they've been told it's going to wreck their hormones?
Right. I feel like with women who go carnivore, one of the top benefits is hormone healing, especially the women who are not afraid of the fats. So I see that so much, which is why I also love Dr. Elizabeth Bright. Like all of her work, her books, her new book just came out geared for teenagers, which is amazing. Her first book is for women who are going through menopause or preparing for menopause. But honestly, that first book is for every single woman on earth. And she talks about the importance of animal fat. And for me, I just listened to my body when I went carnivore because it was screaming for the animal fat. I could not even shut it off if I wanted to. I could not restrict anymore, even if I wanted to. It was already too strong to control. And for me, it was butter. Just because it was easy to eat, I can just take it straight out of the fridge, unwrap it, take a bite or a few bites or the whole stick, and I would feel amazing. So I didn't fear the fat at all because I was listening to these vegan turned carnivore women who embraced the fat. And that was very inspiring for me. Also, Kelly Hogan was a huge inspiration for me. She was one of the top female voices 5 years ago. There were not that many who would take it to YouTube and podcasts and talk about it in that much detail, but she did. So I always give her a huge shout out anytime I talk about my story, because it was because of Kelly's story that made me feel like, wow, I can relate and I feel hope again. So with my hormones, I think the biggest thing that told me the confirmation that I needed was my period coming back within 2 months. And now 5 years in, my flow is 3 days long. Whereas before, when I had a cycle on a standard American diet, it was 10 days long. I don't really know what that means, but I know that it used to be painful, tons of cramping, migraines, mood swings, PMS symptoms. Now, no PMS symptoms, 0 migraines leading up, no cravings for chocolate and junk and ice cream anymore. All I want is to just eat more fat, and I feel very stable in my mood. So I love that you also focus on how do you feel? How do you sleep? How's your mental health? That tells me everything. And I prioritize those things way more than numbers on a lab work piece of paper. So I think high fat carnivore specifically is very, very helpful for those who want to heal hormones, especially for women.
Do you have a certain macro breakdown? Because I get this a lot too. Well, what are your macros? Because people have such a hard time fathoming that you eat all this fat, especially men, right? Because men, it's all if it fits your macros, fit it into your macros. Eat 50% this, 40% this, 10% this.
Sure.
Do you track it at all? I know you don't currently, religiously, but do you have an idea of the fat content that you eat in your diet?
So would you say ribeye is 1-to-1 fat to protein?
Pretty close. Most ribeye, depending on the fat cap, is a little bit higher. So you would have, it's pretty close to the way the numbers work out is 70% of your calories would come from fat and 30% from protein on ribeye.
Got it. Okay. So I never really sat down to calculate my macro split or how many calories I ate. My year 1 of carnivore is very different to my year 5 current year of carnivore. My year 1, I was eating, let's just say 4 to 5 pounds of meat that's similar to the fat to protein of ribeye, plus a stick of butter. So that's a day's worth of fat and protein. So you can calculate that. And that's what I ate every day for a whole year. Now, like year 5, I'm eating about 1/4 to half a stick of butter a day. And I'll eat about 2 pounds of meat, I would say, per day. Some days I might eat a little bit over 2 pounds, like for example, the days leading up to my period. But that's kind of where I sit now. And I also eat as many eggs as I want. But I don't really know how many calories I'm eating or my exact macros because I don't bother to track that anymore. That's like the whole reason why I love carnivore is the freedom that it gives me and the simplicity where I don't have to track and look at the numbers and count. I can just listen to my body, which I feel like is a scary thing, especially when you grew up and, your whole life you've been counting calories and restricting and portion controlling and weighing. When you let that go, it's very scary, but when you get used to it and you start learning your body's cues, it's probably the best thing that you can do to get to your goals. It's going to take longer though. And I get why people love tracking and counting calories or just tracking macros. I think it's great for those who undereat and want to make sure that they're eating enough. But for those who do it obsessively just to lose weight, I can see how that can get quite unhealthy.
Yeah, so I have, fortunate or unfortunate, I spent so many years as an athlete and then amateur bodybuilding, and I tracked so many calories and so many macros that I honestly, like, based on what you're telling me, probably eat close to 26 to 3,000 calories.
Yep.
And your macro split's probably about 75% from fat.
Okay.
Which means your grams of fat are just a little bit higher than your grams of protein.
Gotcha.
Which that's what I typically tell people. I typically say start at a 70-30, which for anybody who's wondering the math on it, if 1 gram of fat has 9 calories and 1 gram of protein has 4 calories and you were to eat one of one, that's about a 70-30 split. So 70% of your calories came from that 1 gram of fat, 30% came from protein. So if you match that up and you eat, that's about 70-30. So for the people who are like, I don't know what to do, like I'm so far lost.
Right.
That's what I typically say. Start there and then just adjust.
Oh, awesome.
That is the goal. Like the goal is to eat when you're hungry,
right?
Eat until you're full, and understand those cues. And for me, like it's really hard to explain to people who have never done it. And carnivores understand it, right? But there will be times where it's not a craving. It's not that I'm like starving, but I know specifically that I need a higher fat content steak, right? I don't always eat ribeye. I'll eat leaner cuts, but there are times where I'm like, I need something like that is the only thing that is going to fulfill what my body is saying. Hey, bro, like eat something.
Absolutely.
And I'll eat it, and it'll literally like take it away. I'm like, okay, I just needed more fat because fat is harder for me to eat. I like melted butter. I cannot eat butter. I want to do a butter video just so I can hopefully make it go viral, but I cannot. Like Courtney's, right? Like Courtney Luna's like butter one that did like 15 million views. Yeah. Like I want to so bad. Just do it and do it with a straight face. But I can't do the texture.
Have you tried it cold, frozen?
I have. Like I did one video. I've done it one time in my life.
Yeah.
Somebody asked, they're like, hey, we're going to do like a compilation. Just do like a quick one. I did it. I kept a straight face. I had to spit it. I literally cannot do the texture.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's not for everybody.
It starts like melting and then it gets a little slimy, which is weird because I'm not a huge texture person.
Okay.
But man, I could not do it. So I'm going to try again. I will try.
Too. But I saw that you made the butter shakes and I was so intrigued.
Oh gosh. Oh man, they're terrible. But it was melted, right? Like, okay. So that was, that also illustrated the point with carnivore for me. So I was saying I'm going to eat 4,000 calories of carnivore every single day. And I'm going to track what my weight is, right?
I see.
And I would get to the end of the day and be so done with eating. Like my body was like, you don't need to eat. And I'd still have 800 calories left. And I'm like, what on earth am I going to do? Because I cannot physically eat another steak. Like,
got it.
And for anybody who has never had true satiation, that's satiety. Is when your body, it could be your favorite food in the entire world. And your body goes, no, no more. And I don't want to. I do not want another bite of ribeye. I do not want another burger. I don't want anything.
Yes.
And I would get to the end of the day and it's 8 o'clock at night. And I'm like,
yeah.
I got 800 calories. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I had to go I don't typically drink milk. I will on occasion, but I had to go get something. So I was like, I need like a base and extra calories. So I got that. I had some Equip protein, just the unflavored isolate. Wow. I was like, this will work. And then whatever calories I needed, I would just pour in melted butter.
Oh my god.
And I'd blend it up and I'd chug it. And I don't know whether to be like weirded out or encouraged, but the number of people who, when I would mention that, be like, what's your butter shake? And I'm like,
yeah, I know.
No,
me too.
Like, don't. It's disgusting. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Like,
that's no longer eating for pleasure.
Exactly. And like, that's what illustrated with me at Carnivore is the whole listening to your body.
For
My body is straight up telling me when to stop. Like, and I'm forcing it, like, for a purpose, but I'm forcing it. And so I think that's so important for people to understand. And it's also crazy because there are a million people who are going to listen to what you just said because you're not very big, right? And they're going to go, there's no way you're eating that much food, right? There's no way you're possibly the weight that you are eating that much food. You
Comments
defy
every
the
day
laws of thermodynamics.
Oh, of course. I'm actually curious, JT, when you did that butter shake experiment or when you were getting to, that was 4,000 calories a day, right? Eating carnivore. Did you gain a lot of weight?
I lost weight.
Okay, exactly. That's what I thought.
I was already lean. Yeah, so this, people cannot wrap their head around. Like, they cannot.
Exactly.
And they're like, well, how do you explain it? Like, maybe it's because we're not held to the laws of thermodynamics, because thermodynamics is not matter. Like, there's no mass in thermodynamics.
Exactly.
But yeah, and so then I get that, well, you lost water weight. That's my favorite one. I'm like, well, I was carnivore for like 2 years, right? And I'm not the strictest carnivore. When I am doing something, like when I'm doing an experiment or I have a specific goal, I'm very strict. But I also do not have weight problems, right? I have lost weight when I went on carnivore.
Great.
But it's pretty easy for me to maintain. So I'll be lenient, right? Like if I'm going out, I usually don't have bad responses to like a day of or a meal of normal food.
Awesome.
So if, we're going out, maybe I'll eat a burger with a bot or, I'll have a drink, whatever it is. And so when I started this, I started strict like a week before, lost a little bit of water weight, and then went through and started losing weight. And I was shocked. I was like, I am literally stuffing myself and I'm like losing more and more weight while forcing myself to continue to eat. And then when I stopped and I went back to just eating whenever I felt like it, right, for however much I want, I lost even more weight. And I had this just like, it's like, this is even hard for me to explain. Like, I don't know the mechanisms right now of why this is happening.
Okay.
If people would just fix their hormones, like start getting metabolically healthy, you don't have to track. Like it's the perfect example. You don't have to meticulously track all your food in order to maintain your weight. If you eat a ton of food one day and not very much food the next day, guess what? It doesn't matter. Like you end up with kind of this like stable weight.
Yes. I knew that you would have lost weight when you told me about like your experiment because this is exactly what I'm doing. I eat as much as my body desires and yet I can stay this lean. I also have no explanation. I also don't, but I do know that under eating is very common on carnivore, especially with women. And under eating, shockingly, is also the reason why people are stalling with their weight loss. They think that, oh, I'm stalled. Let's cut it down even more. Let's restrict even more. But it's really the opposite. If you eat more, you can actually break those stalls. If you eat more, you can actually lose weight. So I also love that you said heal those hormones first. It definitely requires healthy hormones, healthy, happy metabolism before you can get to this point where you eat as much as you want and you can enjoy a nice lean physique without having to work yourself to death in the gym. Like, I don't go to the gym. I definitely want to one day, but I just move my body the way that I like. I walk, I get my steps in, and every day I get comments, she's lying. She's not eating that much. She's definitely not even carnivore. This is all for the gram, you know? It's like, this is literally what I've been eating since day one for 5 years, but it's okay. You believe what you want to believe.
Well, so you think it's bad for you. I videoed every single piece of food that I put in my mouth for 3 weeks. Like,
And you still got those comments?
Yeah. I got people taking screenshots, and
Oh,
they were
wow.
like, there were 4 pieces of cheese here, and there's only 3 pieces on your burger.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, okay, so
Wow.
even though it's logical that I would eat one of those pieces since I only had 3 patties, you are literally, I ate 84,000 calories in 21 days, and you are questioning me over 50. Like, what, they're like, oh, this sleight of hand, this, like, it was probably the worst part of the entire thing, was having to set up my camera and hyperlapse myself the entire time.
Wow.
And people still told me I was lying.
Okay. Exactly.
So yeah, people are just going to say that all the time. So that then brings me to my next, where kind of, how did you get the social media? Because you have this huge presence. At what point were you like, I'm going to take this social media? Is this something that you did like with vegan before, and then you're like, I'm just going to start posting about this? Or how did you become Steak and Butter Gal?
Yeah. So the handle Steak and Butter Gal came to be because I just thought of my 2 most important foods when I was carnivore, and it was steak and butter. That's really 99% of my meals when I first went carnivore. Sticks and sticks of butter, lots of fatty steaks. And I actually started on Instagram before I started on YouTube. And it was like a few months into carnivore, I started on Instagram solely to document my progress, because I was watching all of these women on YouTube and on Instagram back then when the carnivore community was still very small, honestly. And there was no hate, no trolls. All the carnivores that were sharing 5 years ago were very much just hardcore carnivores. And the people following these carnivores, they got it. They were already in it, and they were just loving the lifestyle. So I saw all these thriving women, and I was like, I would love to share my progress as a vegan turned carnivore, because there weren't that many. So I documented my progress, and it just got a lot of attention. I would share a lot of my mom's Asian recipes, like the egg pudding recipe, and that really got a lot of attention early on. So I think it was just a combination of me being a vegan turned carnivore girl and eating sticks and sticks of butter. That was honestly very shocking back then too. And then me being Asian and bringing to the table all these Asian recipes as well. I think that helped a lot with just growing quickly. And then I got a lot of requests from people saying, can you take it to YouTube? Because we would love to see like a whole day's worth of eating, or you talking more in depth about your healing. So I did. So it all happened, I would say, like within the first year of my carnivore journey 4 years ago now. And wow, like the carnivore community now is a whole different monster. It is so different. And I'm so grateful that I got to experience that innocent, wholesome carnivore community 5 years ago, because there was not a single troll back then. There really wasn't.
So that's really funny, because so it took me a little bit longer to get started, because I was what I would call like dirty animal based when I first started.
Nice.
And the results I got were ridiculous. I was like, and anybody who says, and this is why I take personal aim with people who go, well, the only reason you got results on carnivore is because your diet was crap, right? Your diet sucked before, you stopped eating all the processed foods. That's the only reason you got results. Not for me, right? Like are you familiar with Whole30?
Yes.
Yeah. So I did Whole30 for 90 days.
Okay.
90 days straight, no processed foods, no alcohol, no not even a smidgen.
Yeah.
And I kind of did it like a 75 hard that I spaced out for 90 days. So I was working out every day. I was doing all these things. And I lost weight, but I didn't feel better. I was like, what on earth? Like, it actually made me mad. I was like, I did 90 days of this, and I don't care that I lost weight. I don't feel any better. And in some ways, I'm like, I might even feel worse. Like, I don't have like chronic GI issues like IBS or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I felt bloated, right? Like, it didn't help my digestion at all. I kind of felt lethargic. I had these roller coasters. I didn't sleep that well. I felt like my knees were like more inflamed than normal. And it honestly made me mad. I was like, I literally put myself through this and I didn't enjoy it at all. I don't like eating vegetables, so forcing myself to eat vegetables is not on the top of my list. And I was so upset by it that within like a month and a half, I gained all the weight up. And then I finally was like, okay, my wife sent me Paul Saladino, which, as much as carnivores like to hate Saladino,
He's great.
he's exposed a lot of people to, at least the idea of it.
Yeah.
And so I started dirty animal based. And by dirty, I mean my meals would be animal based. And then at the end of the night, if I wanted to have like junk food or a drink, I did. And I got like everything started feeling better. I was like, man, this is crazy. I'm not even like cutting out everything. And so then after, a couple months, I was like, all right, I'm going to get like a little stricter. And then I was strict animal based for a while. And then I finally was like, okay, I'm just going to ditch the fruit because I don't eat that much anyway. Okay. And then I felt even better. And so when people say that, I'm like, okay, I can compare straight up. Like, I had eczema get better, psoriasis get better, inflammation go down, acne start to go. I've had male pattern baldness since I was 25. Like, people love that one. They're like, carnivore caused you to lose all your hair. I was like, I lost my hair like 15 years ago. And I didn't lose it. I still have hair. I just cut it short.
Yeah.
But like the thinning in the back stopped and actually started to like regrow. Like my widow's peak that I had kind of stopped. I was like, this is kind of weird. What's happening right now? And it was about that time where I'm like, you know what? I should get on social media and at least like start just putting it out there. Because at the time I didn't really know anything about carnivore. I knew Saladino. That's about it. I also did not know about all the trolls. So for the first couple months, I was like, I'm going to be this nice, happy, like what you were describing, like this positive account that I'm going to be faceless. Like, I'm just going to post stuff about carnivore. And then I realized all the SHIT going on. I was like, okay, I gotta be a little more of like my personality. So I posted my transformation and that gained a little bit of traction. Nice. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna steer into the skit. And I'm gonna basically take these trolls on head on. And that's honestly like what started getting me a following on Twitter, is because I just went after vegans all day. And it honestly, but Instagram hated it, which is funny. Like, none of my followers on Instagram like when I say anything about vegans.
Interesting.
Which is super weird to me.
Yeah.
So I kind of stopped. I was like, all right, whatever. I'll just, go do the things that I'm doing. And it's worked. But yeah, it's super funny that you bring that up, because I also started to experience from within the carnivore community this like dogma when I was like a little bit animal based, right? You're not carnivore. Right?
For sure.
Change your name because you eat fruit and that's not carnivore. Like,
jeez.
What's wrong with you guys right now?
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I think, with the whole dogma, some carnivores, they are just so sick that they cannot have any plants, not even spices. And I would say I'm one of those. But it really is just how it's delivered. The statements, the criticism, their opinions, their thoughts. There obviously is no one size fits all. And I never, ever, ever, ever try to say in my content, you have to go carnivore at all, But for some reason, I think my content comes off that way, even though I don't say it, maybe because of what I'm showing on my plate, what I'm eating. People will always ask, wait, is there no seasoning or salt on your meat? And I say, I don't eat salt. I don't eat seasonings. I just eat meat. And that rubs people the wrong way even. When I say, this is how I eat, this is how I feel, great. And then they're like, oh, shoot. So does that mean I have to cut out the salt and I can't use black pepper? So, of course, there's going to be a lot lost in translation when I'm not every single video saying, hey guys, before I show you what I'm eating, you don't have to do this, but you can definitely this. It's just impossible to please everyone. It's impossible, you know? So now I just share whatever I want.
Oh yeah, that's when everything changed. When I was like, I'm just going to share whatever I want.
Yes.
And honestly, that's why. So I have a cookbook, and
nice.
A lot of it is not strictly carnivore. And I even in like the title, like not the title of the cookbook, but like in the first page, in everything that I do, the description, everything, it's like keto, animal-based, carnivore. Like it's kind of a combination of all of them.
That's awesome.
The nice thing though is if you don't want to include some of these things, just take them out. It's not going to ruin the recipe. Right. But that was my attack on it, because there was all these people that are like, you can only eat, you can't have seasons. So I'm like, no, you can actually eat whatever you want as long as you're okay with it. Like as long as you can tolerate it, I can tolerate it just fine. I don't often eat a lot of seasonings though. I literally season my stuff with salt. That's it. That's awesome. I don't even use pepper anymore. I don't use garlic powder. Just because I feel it doesn't need it. And that's it. And I get the same thing. You're saying we can't. I was like, dude, literally just go look at my cookbook. I've got like, I have a burrito recipe in there. Like, there's a lot of seasoning in there. Like, calm down. Or people will go, that's not carnivore. I'm like, I never claimed it. And just because I'm carnivore and I eat carnivore does not mean I cannot also go off kilter a little bit. Which is what I got with my latest. I made frozen, like I call them butter bombs. Nice. And it's literally just whipped butter with raw milk. People are like, well, why do you use cream? I'm like, I didn't have cream. Like 95% of my recipes are just what I have in the fridge. like I don't put that much thought into it. It's literally just whipped butter and milk, and then a little bit of vanilla and a flavored equipped protein. And then I froze them. I was like, man, these are actually good. Like I can actually eat these. And so many people, that's not carnivore. Then don't eat them. I don't care. Like it's a little bit of vanilla, and there's this much stevia in the flavored equipped proteins.
Right. That's so interesting.
Don't eat it then. And they're like, but don't call it carnivore. And I was like, A, I didn't call it carnivore. And B, just because I'm carnivore and I eat them, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's just a word. So, yes. It's just a word.
Yes, it's just a word. So it's that would lead into the next one. How does all the hate that you get? Because I get a ton. Like a ton. Because videos go viral, and inevitably the hundreds of thousands of people that you reach that do not follow you, a small portion of them feel the need to comment and usually say something negative. How do you handle that? Like, does it bother you? Does it? Because I've talked to people who have a decent platform. Most of them doesn't. But at the end of the day, we're still human. And, after the 15th time I've had death wished on me for the day, sometimes it might get to you a little bit.
For sure. To me, I think it helps for me when I look at these hate comments to imagine that it's just my little brother. For some reason, that really helps me. And my little brother, currently, he's 14 years old. And when I hear him talk and text his friends and use that lingo, it literally is the voice that I read these comments in for some reason. It's my baby brother, They talk just like those hate comments, seriously. And when I go back to visit my brother and I just observe him with his friends, it's like the similarity is uncanny. The way that they talk, the language and the words that they use, even when they do hate comments on their TikTok favorite stuff, it's the same type of language. And so that really helps me. It's just, I don't take these comments seriously. In fact, I enjoy reading them. I enjoy featuring them in my stories. It's very entertaining because it's just so eye-opening to see the level of education of most of the population. 99.9%, I would say, of the population They're not carnivore. They're not animal based. They don't even understand it. They don't yet know the truth about just how profound the connection is between food and your health is. So when I see these very ignorant comments, I feature it on my stories and I share the laughs with my followers. And every time I share a screenshot of a comment, especially those really funny nutritionist ones, this is coming from a nutritionist. I'm a nutritionist and I think, you're doing a disservice to society by posting this. So dangerous. I get to have awesome conversations with carnivores that follow me because they always reply to these stories and they share their stance, their thoughts, their experience. And it's awesome. So that's kind of the habit that I've formed. I post content. It happens to go viral a lot, probably because of the butter chomping. And then I get to read these comments and I feature them in my stories and I have great conversations with people who actually get it.
Yeah, that's so true. And I feature some of the more ridiculous ones. Like I had a guy basically tell me that I was not needed in the conversation and he wasn't talking to me. And I was like, bro, you're on my post. You are on my
so
post.
Not needed.
What? I was like, what is happening right now? I was like, you can't even be serious right now. But what I have taken and what has worked in terms of the reach that Instagram has decided they like for me is rather than trying to like do the isolated incidents, I just seek out the people who have a following that are parroting that these people are parroting, right? Like, so, you get the people who comment, you need carbs, you need carbs, you need carbs. So I go find a dietitian that says you need carbs. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to do a video about you. And those are the ones that when I started doing that and realized that's more of my personality anyway, is to try and poke holes in this, because the comments I inevitably get, well, what's your education? Right? Like,
right.
They're a registered dietitian. They have a master's. I'm like, but you cannot possibly see how silly the stuff that they're saying.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And so I kind of do it the same way, because then it ends up with these conversations in the comments. And half the time I'm not even involved. Like it's my followers against non-followers, and then everybody just argues.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll comment in every once in a while, and they'll be like, "Why are you commenting?" I'm like, "Because this drives engagement. Instagram loves it."
Exactly.
They're like, "Well, you can't leave it alone." I was like, "You're on my post, and every time you make a comment, I get a notification." So
that's true.
I'm just gonna keep you going and like continue, because these 1,000 comments I have on this video is really helping my engagement.
So smart. Do any of the nutritionists that you talk about or feature, do they ever reply back to you or make a video as a reply?
I have had a couple. One told me that I was just some educated meathead, and then circled my digital creator tag. And I do this on purpose. I don't list any of my education. So I have a bachelor's in a related field. I also have a master's. It's not in nutrition. But at the end of the day, higher education just teaches you how to seek out and understand information. That's literally all higher education does. And I have like an extensive background. And so when people comment this, I'm like, okay, I don't care. Or they'll be like, what are your qualifications? I'm like, it literally does not matter. I know high school dropouts that are smarter on this subject than people with PhDs. For sure. Like we got PhDs out there who are telling me I have to eat sugar. What is happening right now? Yeah. I do. You really find out the insecure people who come in and they will fight with people on my video in my comment section.
Interesting.
Like, what's happening? And so I just let them go. I'm like, okay, like you guys are going to get it. Like I had this one guy has 1 million followers on TikTok.
Wow.
Should be pretty busy, right? He picked apart, he's done a video on you. Long hair, nice. Pearl necklace, paints his nails.
Oh, awesome.
And I did a video on, he picked on this girl that I actually follow, who had SIBO, which is like a bacteria that basically sucks all her nutrients out. Right. And she looked anorexic, started eating carnivore, gained a bunch of weight, got healthy. He did a video when she first started, and was like, this is what this chick eats on a carnivore. This is a dangerously low amount of food, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, that's not cool. So I went in and just ripped it. And he came into my comments, and I'm like, you have 1 million followers. Like, what are you... Like, at the time, I mean, I think I had maybe, like, 20,000 followers. I was like, I'm like small potatoes. Like, what are you doing right now? And then he would fight in my comments and say the most childish stuff. I'm like,
oh no,
what's going on? So yes, I do have people who come in. I've had Lane Norton come into my videos and like trying, what is wrong with you people? Like, just, you guys are so soft.
Definitely says a lot about them if they're commenting on your videos and they're not even bold enough to just make a reply on their page. Why not just do that? You know?
Yeah, I never, if anybody does a video on me, I might go watch it because I might find it funny.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like, nothing I say in your comments is going to do anything, because guess what? These are to your followers, and your followers inherently are not going to like me. So I don't care.
Exactly.
Whatever.
That's right. That's the right mindset.
But before we run out of time, I did want to ask you to go over, I have Steak and Butter Gang pulled up. I see you doing these like 800 people, it's not that many, like Zoom group calls, and you got like Dr. Kilt's on there, which I'm super jealous. I'm going to get him on my podcast. Just wait.
Yes. He's great. Doing all of these things. So talk to me real quick about the Steak and Butter Gang, and then tell people where tell people where they can find you on social media. Well, firstly, I want to give you the free link to join the gang so you can join in on these meetings and Zoom calls. It's so much fun. I will send you that free link right after. But it is a community on the Mighty Networks. And I created this community 4 years ago because I was lonely and I didn't want to do carnivore alone. And I just wanted to bring people together off social media. So there's no trolls, no cat commercials and stuff, just carnivore content and posts and updates, questions, concerns. And so to this day, it is still very much a safe haven for carnivores to share and connect and make friends. And now we do monthly challenges. I always feature everybody's favorite Dr. Anthony Chafee, Dr. Kiltz, Dr. Hampton, Rebecca Heischman, just some fabulous carnivore role models and experts. And the members, they can ask their questions. We have meetings to just celebrate victories, because I think that's also so important to count your victories and celebrate together. And it's just a great place for people who just need that extra guidance and want to make friends. So you can join the community at SBG Meet, as in fatty meetup, meetup.com. And if not, you can just follow Carnivore JT. He has excellent content for free. You can just watch YouTube videos. There are so many great content creators now that are carnivore, that share carnivore advice, meals, recipes, what I eat in a day. So I think there's like a wealth of information that you can enjoy if you're new to carnivore and watching this. That's free. But all of my platforms and handles, it's Steak and Butter Gal, all platforms.
Yeah. So nice to be able to have like a consistent handle across all social media platforms, right? Like,
it's easy.
I remember when I first was creating social media, I'm lucky I have Carnivore JT pretty much exclusively. Nice. But I remember creating it and you had to change it for everyone. You're like, well, I've got 68105 on this one and 59304 on this one.
Oh, wow.
So that is awesome that you have that. I highly recommend everybody go give Steak and Butter Gal, Bella, a follow, especially if you like butter. It still cracks me up. I'm going to try again. Maybe I should freeze it. I don't know. Maybe that'll break my teeth. I don't know.
It's definitely easier frozen.
Okay, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do a video on frozen butter, and we'll see what happens. Yes. So I appreciate everybody who tuned in. Go and give Bella a follow. I will link all of her stuff in the descriptions. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.